I didn't realize how much of my life I'd built on assumptions until the night everything cracked open. Up until then, things between me and Rachel weren't perfect, but they were stable, predictable in the way long relationships become when you stop trying to impress each other and just exist side by side. We lived in a 2-story house in a quiet suburb outside Denver, the kind of place where people waved while mowing their lawns and complained about HOA emails like it was a sport. I worked in commercial real estate. She was a fitness instructor who had recently started doing private sessions on the side. That part, her private sessions, was where things began to shift, though I didn't see it clearly at first. At the beginning, it felt like she'd found something that excited her again. She'd always been into fitness, but now she had this new energy. She'd come home flushed, talking about new clients, new routines, new goals. I remember thinking it was good for her, good for us. She started staying out later, but she always had a reason. Last-minute booking, she'd say, or client ran over. It made sense. People with money liked convenience, and she was building that kind of clientele. Still, something subtle changed in her. It wasn't just the hours. She became sharper, more aware of herself. The way she dressed shifted. Nothing inappropriate, just tighter, more intentional. She'd catch her reflection more often, adjust things, smile at herself in a way I hadn't seen in years. At first, I thought she was just gaining confidence. But confidence doesn't usually come with distance. She started pulling away from me physically, in ways that were hard to explain without sounding paranoid. She still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still sat next to me on the couch, but there was a disconnect. Like she was there, but not really there. Sex became less frequent. When it did happen, it felt different, like she was somewhere else in her head. Sometimes she seemed almost distracted, like she was going through motions she used to enjoy, but now just tolerated. I told myself it was stress. New business, new responsibilities. It happens. But then there were the little things. Her phone used to be something she'd leave anywhere. Kitchen counter, couch, bathroom sink. Now it was always with her. Face down. Silent. If a notification popped up, she'd glance at it quickly, almost reflexively, then lock the screen. One night we were watching a show and she got a message. I didn't even mean to notice, but the name flashed just long enough for me to catch it. D. Just that. No full name. She angled the phone away before I could see more, typing quickly. "Who's D?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. She didn't even look up. "New client. What's his name?" "Daniel, I think," she said, too quickly. "Or David, something like that." Something about that answer didn't sit right. My wife was the kind of person who remembered everything. Names, birthdays, random details about people she'd met once. The idea that she didn't know a client's name felt off. But I let it go. That's the thing about suspicion. It doesn't explode all at once. It builds quietly, piece by piece, until suddenly you can't ignore it anymore. A week later, I came home early from work. I had a meeting canceled last minute, and I figured I'd surprise her, maybe grab takeout, spend some time together, try to reconnect. Her car was in the driveway. I walked in, calling out her name. No answer. The house was quiet, but not empty quiet. There was this faint noise coming from upstairs. Not loud enough to be obvious, but enough to make me pause. I moved toward the staircase, listening. At first, I thought it was the TV. Then I realized it wasn't. It was movement, rhythmic, uneven, and something else, soft, breathy sounds that made my stomach drop before my brain could even process what I was hearing. I froze halfway up the stairs. For a second, I told myself I was wrong, that there had to be another explanation, that maybe she was working out or on a call or... Then I heard it. Her voice. Low, strained, unmistakable. I didn't think, I just moved. I reached the bedroom door and pushed it open so hard it slammed against the wall. And there it was. Everything. Rachel, on our bed, with a man I had never seen before. Bigger than me in every way. Taller, broader, built like someone who lived in a gym instead of just working in one. His back was to me, muscles flexing in a way that looked almost unreal, like something out of a fitness ad. She saw me first. Her face went white, completely drained, like someone had flipped a switch. "Eben," she started. The guy turned, and for a second we just stared at each other. He didn't scramble, didn't panic. He just looked at me, calm, almost annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. That hit me harder than anything else. "Get the hell out of my house," I said, my voice coming out lower than I expected. Rachel was already pulling away, grabbing for the sheet, her hands shaking. "It's not, Ethan, please just..." "Don't," I snapped, not even looking at her. "Don't say a word." The guy stood up slowly, completely unfazed. He didn't rush to get dressed, didn't act embarrassed. He just grabbed his clothes, pulling them on with this casual confidence that made my blood boil. For a split second, I considered hitting him. The thought flashed through my mind so clearly it almost scared me. But I didn't, because this wasn't about him. It was about her. He finished dressing, glanced at Rachel, then back at me. "I'll go," he said, like he was doing me a favor. I didn't respond. He walked past me, close enough that I could feel the heat off him, and left without another word. The front door closed downstairs. Silence. I stood there, staring at the bed, at the woman I thought I knew. She was clutching the sheet around herself, eyes wide, breathing uneven. "Ethan," she said again, softer this time. I laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was sharp, hollow, like something breaking. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. That was my answer. "How long?" I repeated, louder. "A few months," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A few months." I nodded slowly, like I was processing it. But really I wasn't. My mind felt disconnected from my body, like I was watching this happen to someone else. "Is he the only one?" I asked. "Yes," she said quickly. Too quickly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't recognize the person in front of me. "Don't lie to me," I said. "I'm not," she insisted, tears starting to form. She opened her mouth, like she wanted to explain, to justify, to fix something that was already beyond repair. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. It started, and then you kept doing it," I cut in. She flinched. "I was going to tell you," she added quickly. I shook my head. "No, you weren't." Her silence confirmed it. I took a step back, running a hand through my hair, trying to ground myself. "What does he have?" I asked quietly. "That I don't." She didn't answer. That hurt more than anything she could have said. "Say it," I pushed. She looked down, gripping the sheet tighter. "He's different," she said finally. "Different how?" She hesitated again, and I could see the internal battle on her face.
The part of her that wanted to lie, to soften it, to protect me, but something in my expression must have told her not to. "He's bigger," she said. The words hung in the air. "He's stronger," she added, her voice cracking. "And it's not just that, Ethan, it's the way he makes me feel. It's beyond anything I've experienced before." There it was, raw, unfiltered, brutal. I let out a slow breath, staring at her like she was a stranger. "Beyond anything," I repeated. She started crying then, real tears now, not just shock. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. "I still love you." I laughed again, softer this time. "You don't do this to someone you love," I said. She didn't argue, because she couldn't. I turned and walked out of the room, down the stairs, out the front door, not even sure where I was going. All I knew was that the life I thought I had was gone. And the worst part, it wasn't just that she cheated. It was that, in her own words, whatever she found out there, it was bigger, stronger, and beyond anything. And I had no idea what to do with that. I didn't drive anywhere specific at first. I just got in my car and left, like distance alone could fix something that had already been burned into my head. The streets blurred together, familiar neighborhoods turning into random intersections I barely registered. At some point, I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had gone white. Her words kept looping. Bigger, stronger, beyond anything. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the comparison, the fact that somewhere along the line, she had measured me against someone else, and I hadn't just come up short. I had been completely outmatched. I pulled into the parking lot of a grocery store I didn't even need to be at, and just sat there with the engine running. People walked in and out around me like everything was normal, like the world hadn't just cracked open. I kept seeing it. The way he looked, the way he moved, the way he didn't even seem concerned that I'd walked in. That confidence, that control. I thought about Rachel's face when she said it. Not just guilt, not just regret. There was something else there, something almost conflicted, like she hated herself for it but couldn't deny what she felt. That part stuck with me. After about 20 minutes, my phone started buzzing. I didn't need to look to know it was her. It rang once, stopped, then again, then texts. I ignored it. Eventually, I turned the car off and leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes. For a second, I thought maybe I'd calm down, that I'd start thinking rationally. Instead, I felt worse. Because once the initial shock faded, something else crept in. Questions. Who was he really? How did it start? How long had she been looking at me while thinking about him? I opened my eyes and grabbed my phone. Her name lit up the screen again. I declined the call. Then, without really thinking it through, I opened our text thread. There were a dozen messages already. Ethan, please talk to me. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this. We need to talk. I love you. That last one made my jaw tighten. I stared at it for a long time before locking the screen and tossing the phone onto the passenger seat. I didn't respond. Instead, I started the car again and drove home. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wasn't ready to leave yet. Maybe I needed answers more than I needed distance. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was still there. Of course it was. I sat in the car for a minute, staring at the front door, trying to prepare myself for whatever was waiting inside. Then I went in. She was in the living room, sitting on the couch, still wrapped in a blanket. Her hair was damp, like she'd taken a shower, probably trying to wash everything away. She looked up the second I walked in. Relief flooded her face so fast it almost made me sick. Ethan, she said, standing up quickly. I didn't respond. I just walked past her into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. She followed me, hesitant, like she didn't know how close she was allowed to get. Please don't shut me out, she said. I took a sip of water, buying myself a second before answering. I walked in on you with another man in our bed, I said flatly. What exactly do you expect from me right now? She swallowed hard. I expect you to be angry. I don't want you to leave without talking. I let out a slow breath, setting the bottle down. Fine, I said. Then talk. She nodded, like she'd been waiting for permission. It started a few months ago, she began, her voice shaky. He came in as a client. At first, it was normal, just training sessions. His name, I said. She hesitated for a split second. Ryan. Of course it was something simple like that. Something normal, like the guy himself. And then, I pressed. He kept booking more sessions, she said. More than most clients. He was intense, focused. He pushed himself harder than anyone I'd worked with before. I crossed my arms, watching her carefully. And that impressed you? I asked. It wasn't just that, she said quickly. It was the way he looked at me. Like I wasn't just his trainer. Like he saw me. I almost laughed at that. You think I didn't see you? I asked. That's not what I mean, she said, shaking her head. You got comfortable, Ethan. We both did. He didn't treat me like something he already had. He treated me like something he wanted. The words hit harder than I expected. Wanted. Like I didn't want her anymore. And that's all it took? I asked, my voice tightening. Some guy gives you attention and suddenly everything we have doesn't matter? No, she said, stepping closer. It wasn't sudden. It built over time. Conversations, jokes, the way he challenged me. It just kept escalating. And the first time? I asked. She closed her eyes briefly, like she didn't want to relive it. It was after a late session, she said quietly. We were both exhausted. He made a comment, something flirty. I should have shut it down, but I didn't. Of course you didn't, I muttered. She ignored that. One thing led to another. It just happened. I shook my head. No, it didn't just happen. You made a choice. She didn't argue. Silence filled the room for a few seconds, thick and heavy. Why keep going? I asked finally. Why not stop after the first time? She looked at me, and for a moment I saw that same conflict from earlier. Because I couldn't, she said. That answer made something in me snap. You couldn't? I repeated. What does that even mean? I tried, she said, her voice rising. I told myself it was a mistake, that I wouldn't see him again outside of training. But every time I was around him, it was like something took over. I stared at her, disbelief mixing with anger. You're telling me you had no control? I asked. I had control, she said quickly. I just didn't use it. At least she was honest about that. And what is he to you now? I asked. She hesitated again, and I felt my stomach twist. That hesitation, I said quietly, that tells me everything. It's complicated, she cut in. No, it's not. You're either done with him or you're not. She looked down, gripping the blanket tighter around herself. I haven't ended it yet, she admitted. I laughed again, but there was no humor in it.
Unbelievable, I said, shaking my head. You get caught and you're still seeing him? I didn't expect you to come home early, she said, like that somehow made it better. That's not the point, I snapped. The point is, even now, you're not choosing me. I am choosing you, she insisted, stepping closer again. I'm here, I'm talking to you, I'm trying to fix this. Trying to fix it would have been ending it the moment it started, I said. She flinched again. I'll end it, she said quickly. I swear, Ethan, I'll call him right now if you want. I studied her face, looking for something real. And if I hadn't walked in? I asked. She didn't answer, because she couldn't. That silence told me more than anything else. I turned away from her, running my hands over my face, trying to study myself. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice quieter now. She took a long time to respond. "I don't know," she said finally. That one hurt more than everything else combined. Not a yes, not a no, just uncertainty, like I was now competing with someone she couldn't even define. I nodded slowly, absorbing it. "Okay," I said under my breath. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It means I need space," I said. Her face fell immediately. "Ethan, please." "I can't be here right now," I cut in. "Not with you, not with all of this." "Where are you going?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I can't stay." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "Please don't leave like this," she said, her voice breaking. "We can work through it. We've been through worse." I paused at that, turning back to look at her. "No," I said quietly. "We haven't." And with that, I walked out again. This time, I didn't come back. I ended up at a cheap hotel off the highway, about 20 minutes away. The kind of place you don't ask questions about and nobody asks you any. The room smelled faintly like detergent and something older underneath it. I didn't care. I dropped my bag on the chair, sat on the edge of the bed, and just stared at the wall. Everything felt unreal. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up this time, expecting it to be Rachel. It wasn't. It was a number I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a second before answering. "Hello?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a male voice. "Ethan?" My grip on the phone tightened instantly. "Who is this?" I asked, even though I already had a feeling. "It's Ryan," he said. Of course it was. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat. "I figured we should talk," he said, calm, controlled, like earlier. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You think we should talk?" I said. "After what you did?" "I didn't do anything you didn't allow to happen," he replied. That line hit like a punch. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" I snapped. "It means she chose me," he said, over and over again. Silence filled the space between us, because as much as I hated hearing it, I knew he wasn't wrong. For a second, I couldn't even respond to him, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because there were too many things, all colliding at once in my head. Anger, humiliation, disbelief, it all stacked on top of each other until I just sat there gripping the phone, breathing slower than I should have been. "You've got some nerve calling me," I finally said. Ryan didn't raise his voice, didn't get defensive. "I get why you're pissed," he said. "You should be." That calm tone again, like he was above the situation, like he had control over something that had been mine. "You don't get to act reasonable here," I snapped. "You were in my house, my bed. I was where she let me be," he replied. There it was again. That same point, repeated in a slightly different way. Not aggressive, not mocking, just direct. And that's what made it worse, because I couldn't just dismiss it as some cocky guy talking trash. He wasn't trying to provoke me. He was stating something he clearly believed. "Why are you calling me?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. "What's the goal here?" There was a short pause. "Because this doesn't end clean," he said. "Not for you, not for her, and not for me." I frowned, leaning forward slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means you think this is just about cheating," he said. "It's not." I let out a slow breath, already feeling my patience thinning. "Then explain it." Another pause, longer this time. Then he said something I didn't expect. "She told you what I am to her, right?" My jaw tightened. "She told me enough." "And what did she say?" he asked. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to answer, but because saying it out loud again felt like reopening something that had barely stopped bleeding. "She said you're different," I said, "that you make her feel something she's never felt before." Ryan didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. "Yeah," he said. "That sounds like her." That annoyed me more than anything. The way he said it, like he knew her, like he understood her in a way I didn't. "You think that makes you special?" I asked. "No," he said. "I think it makes this complicated." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "There's nothing complicated about it. You crossed a line, she crossed a line. End of story." "If it were that simple, I wouldn't be calling you," he said. Something about the way he said that made me sit up straighter. "What aren't you saying?" I asked. Another pause. And then he said it. "She didn't tell you everything, did she?" A cold feeling spread through my chest. "What are you talking about?" I asked slowly. "I figured she wouldn't," he continued. "Not right away." My grip on the phone tightened again. "Tell me." "You sure you want that?" he asked. "Don't play games with me," I snapped. If you have something to say it. Silence. Then finally, she's pregnant. The word hit like a physical impact, like something slammed into my chest and knocked the air out of me. For a second, I thought I misheard him. What? I said, my voice barely coming out. She's pregnant, he repeated. She found out a couple weeks ago. I stood up without realizing it, pacing the small hotel room. That's not possible, I said immediately. She would have told me. Would she? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know anymore. How do you know? Because I was there, he said. She didn't want to go alone. That made my stomach turn. You went with her? I asked. Yeah. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process it, trying to piece together a timeline that suddenly didn't make sense. How far along? I asked. About 6 weeks, he said. 6 weeks. I did the math without meaning to. It lined up. Too perfectly. Is it mine? I asked, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. There was a long pause on the other end. I don't know, he said. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted from broken to completely shattered. I stopped pacing and just stood there, staring at the wall like it might give me answers. You don't know, I repeated. No, he said, and neither does she. I let out a slow, shaky breath. And you're just okay with that? I asked. It's not about being okay with it, he said. It's about dealing with it. By calling me? I shot back. By making sure you're not blindsided later, he said. She's going to have to tell you. And when she does, it's going to get worse if you hear it from her without context. I laughed again, but it sounded hollow even to me. Context? I said. You think this helps? I think it gives you the full picture, he replied. I pressed my fingers against my forehead, trying to steady myself. Why do you care? I asked after a moment. Why not just stay out of it? Another pause. Because I'm part of it, he said, whether you like it or not. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. And what do you want? I asked. From her, from this. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm not walking away from it. Of course he wasn't. Why would he? From his perspective, he hadn't lost anything. I should hang up, I said. Yeah, he replied. You probably should. But neither of us ended the call right away. There's one more thing, he added. I almost didn't ask. Part of me didn't want to hear anything else. But I did. What? She didn't just fall into this, he said. She chose it. But she's also not the same person you think she is anymore. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means whatever you had before, it's gone, he said. You're not trying to get back to something. You're deciding if you can live with who she is now. I didn't respond. Because again, he wasn't wrong. I'm done, I said finally, and ended the call before he could say anything else. The silence in the room felt heavier than before. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, replaying everything he'd said. Pregnant. The word echoed in my head, over and over. I tried to think back, to remember if there were signs, missed clues, anything. But all I could see was her face earlier that day, the way she looked at me, the way she hesitated. She knew, or at least suspected, and she didn't tell me. I grabbed my jacket and keys without thinking. I needed answers. Not from him, from her. The drive back felt shorter this time, even though I wasn't paying attention to the road. My mind was racing too fast for that. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for one light in the living room. She was still there. Of course she was. I got out of the car and walked straight to the front door, not slowing down, not second-guessing anything. I opened it and stepped inside. Rachel, I called out. She appeared almost instantly, like she'd been waiting for me. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Ethan, she said, relief flooding her face again. I thought you weren't coming back tonight. Are you pregnant? I cut in. The words hit the room like a shockwave. She froze. Completely. And in that silence, I got my answer. My chest tightened. How far along? I asked, my voice low. She swallowed hard, her hands starting to shake. Who told you? She asked instead. That's not what I asked, I said. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. About 6 weeks, she said quietly. The same number. Of course it was.
I nodded slowly, trying to keep myself together. Is it mine? I asked. Her face crumpled slightly, like the question physically hurt her. I don't know, she whispered. There it was, out in the open. No more guessing, no more doubt. Just the truth. I let out a breath that felt like it had been stuck in my chest for hours. And you weren't going to tell me? I asked. I was, she said quickly. I just needed time to figure things out. Figure what out? I snapped. Who the father is? Tears started streaming down her face. I didn't want to hurt you more, she said. I shook my head slowly. You don't get to control that anymore, I said. You lost that right. She didn't argue. She just stood there, crying, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. But even then, even with everything crashing down around us, one thought kept pushing its way to the front of my mind. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was permanent. A child. A future that was now tangled between three people, and I had no idea where I stood in it. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I stayed in the house, but not with her. I took the couch downstairs while she locked herself in the bedroom, and the distance between those two spaces felt bigger than the distance I'd driven earlier. Every sound carried. The floor creaking when she moved, the faint hum of the bathroom fan, the quiet, uneven rhythm of someone who was crying but trying not to be heard. I just stared at the ceiling. 6 weeks. I kept replaying it, lining it up with memories I didn't want to revisit. Dinners we had, conversations that now felt fake, moments where she looked me in the eyes and didn't say anything about what was happening inside her body, inside her life, inside our life. At some point around 3 a.m, I sat up and ran both hands over my face, trying to clear the fog in my head. But it didn't clear, it just shifted, because now the anger wasn't the only thing there. There was something else creeping in. Fear. Not just about losing her, that part was already real, but about what came next. About the possibility that no matter what I did, I'd be tied to this situation forever. That even if I walked away, there would always be a version of this life that could have been mine. Or worse, a version that still was. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water I didn't really want. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That part had passed. Now everything felt cold, focused, clear in a way that almost scared me. Around 7, I heard her come downstairs. Soft steps, careful, like she didn't know if she was allowed to exist in the same space as me. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing in particular. She stopped when she saw me. Did you sleep at all? She asked quietly. No, I said. She nodded, like she expected that. There was a long pause before she moved any closer. I made coffee, she said. If you want some. I don't. Another pause. She sat down across from me, keeping distance between us. I noticed she was wearing one of my old hoodies, the kind she used to steal all the time because it made her feel close to me. Now it just felt wrong. I'm going to the doctor today, she said. I looked at her for the first time that morning. For what? I asked, even though I already knew. To confirm everything, she said. To figure out next steps. Next steps. That phrase hit differently now. What are your options? I asked. Her eyes flickered with something, uncertainty, maybe fear. I don't know yet, she admitted. I haven't decided anything. I leaned back slightly in the chair, studying her. You mean you haven't decided who you want to build a future with? I said. That's not fair, she said quickly. Isn't it? I asked. She looked down at her hands. I'm trying to process everything, she said. This isn't easy for me either. I let out a slow breath. You're right, I said. It's not easy for you. But you had time to process. You've had weeks. I've had less than 12 hours. She flinched at that. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. You didn't, I replied. That's the point. Silence settled between us again. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since last night. Does he know you're here? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything before she even answered. Yes, she said quietly. Of course he did. Did you talk to him after I left? I asked. Yes. And? She swallowed.
He said he wants to be involved, she said. Whatever happens. I nodded slowly. And what do you want? I asked. Her eyes met mine, and for a second, I saw something real there. Not confusion, not guilt, fear. I don't know, she said again. That answer didn't make me angry this time. It just made things clear. I stood up from the table, the decision settling into me in a way that felt final. I do, I said. Her head snapped up. What? I know what I want, I repeated. She stood up too, like she needed to be closer to hear it. What? She asked again, her voice trembling. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't seeing the woman I had built a life with. I was seeing someone else, someone who had made choices I couldn't undo. I'm not staying, I said. The words landed hard. Her face fell instantly, like something inside her had collapsed. Ethan, please, she started. I shook my head. No, I said. I've thought about it all night. There's no version of this where I come out okay. We can fix this, she said, stepping closer. People come back from worse. We can go to therapy, This isn't about therapy, I cut in. This is about trust, and you didn't just break it, you replaced it with something else. Tears filled her eyes again. I made a mistake, she said. No, I replied. You made a series of choices, over and over again. She reached for me, but I stepped back before she could touch me. That seemed to break something in her. What about us? She asked, her voice cracking. What about everything we've built? I let out a quiet breath. It doesn't exist anymore, I said. That's not true, she said, shaking her head. We don't, I said firmly, because even if I stayed, I'd never stop wondering. Every time you looked at me, every time you touched me, I'd be thinking about him, about what you said. Her expression twisted in pain. Ethan, you told me he was bigger, stronger, beyond anything, I said, my voice steady. Do you have any idea what that does to someone? She covered her mouth, crying harder now. I didn't mean it like that, she said. But you did, I replied. You meant it exactly how it sounded. Silence. Heavy. Final. And now there's a child, I continued, one that might not even be mine. You expect me to just, what? Step into that and pretend none of this happened? I'm not asking you to pretend, she said. I'm asking you to stay. I shook my head slowly. I can't, I said. She sank back into the chair like her legs gave out. So that's it? She asked. You're just walking away? I paused for a moment. Then I nodded. Yeah, I said. That's it. She didn't say anything after that. She just sat there, crying quietly, as I walked past her and went upstairs. Packing didn't take long. I didn't grab everything, just the essentials. Clothes, documents, a few personal things. The rest didn't matter anymore. When I came back downstairs, she was still in the same spot. She looked up as I headed for the door. Ethan, she said softly. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. If it's yours, she said, her voice barely holding together. Would you want to know? That question hung in the air. For a long time, I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to say yes, to hold on to something, to believe there was still a piece of this that belonged to me. But another part knew that no matter what the answer was, it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't erase what happened. It wouldn't make me forget. I finally turned slightly, just enough to glance back at her. I don't know, I said, and that was the most honest answer I had. Then I walked out. This time, I didn't look back. The air outside felt different. Colder, maybe. Or maybe it was just me. I got in my car, started the engine, and sat there for a second, letting it all settle. The house in front of me wasn't home anymore. It was just a place where something ended. And whatever came next, it was mine alone.